what we crave is this genuine message and just this honest connection, whether it's a brand or even people too. I mean, who likes connecting with a liar that you don't know if they're telling you the truth or not? And so I think that not only is it good for the audience to connect with, but I think it's also good for you too. I think that if you try to put out something that isn't representative of who you are or what you believe in or what your values are, I think it's going to suck the soul out of you, to be honest.
Welcome to The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods, the nation's first podcast devoted to the business and lifestyle of the hospitality industry. Now, here's your host, Woolco Foods CEO Stephen Toberoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods. I am your host, Stephen Toberoff, and today I'm super excited to talk to my guest because I love their website, I love their concept, and this is my first time having the pleasure to have an in-depth conversation, but everything that's communicated to me about this company and this brand is really very exciting. So let's just jump right into it. I want to introduce my guest today. It is Lloyd Ortuoste. He is the co-founder and chief executive bear of Baonanas here in Jersey City, an amazing company making desserts, banana pudding, and other desserts. Lloyd, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Me too. I read on your website, and your website's amazing, the backstory and the serendipitous event that led to the founding of Baonanas. But if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us a little bit about sort of yourself and how you came to Baonanas, starting it and all that process in the beginning?
Sure. When you say that the beginning was serendipitous, I think that's the perfect word for it. At the time, in 2014, I was in school I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I was in school for getting my bachelor's in psychology. I wasn't a bachelor. I was dating Trisha, who is my now fiance, and we co-founded Baonanas completely by accident. Our car had a little bit of a dent from a hit and run, and we needed to raise money to fix our car, and we took to Instagram with the hashtag Baonanas to try to spread the word that we were selling our take on banana pudding. And from then on, friends, strangers, friends of friends, they found out about the hashtag, they spread the word, they bought our new take on banana pudding. And next thing we knew, we had a business on our hands and just kind of had to figure out, how do we juggle this with school? Do we take this thing full time? As two people without business backgrounds, how do we start and run a business?
So, Lloyd, I'm curious, what was the impetus behind banana pudding? Because I'm assuming you have a love of food, but to settle on that particular option, what was sort of the backstory in that? I'm just curious.
That's a good question. So, we always used to drive to New York City for banana pudding. Being in Jersey City, it's around a 15-minute drive, and there's a lot of good spots in New York City for banana pudding. But we were sick of the drive, the toll, the parking. And so years before we did this Instagram fundraiser, Trisha found a way to make her take on banana pudding, where instead of using box Jell-O, we actually do our new version of leche flan, which is a Filipino dessert. And instead of pudding, it now became a light, fluffy mousse. We would take this vanilla mousse. Of course, we would layer it with vanilla wafers and sliced bananas, as the classic banana pudding recipe goes. And we would bring it to family and friend potlucks, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, things like that. And people would always grab it as they're getting the turkey and the mashed potatoes because they knew they didn't reserve some of our, new take on banana pudding with their entree, that it would be completely gone by the time dessert came around. And so when the fundraiser came along, it was actually a friend of ours that suggested that we sell our take on banana pudding to raise the money, which to preface that was only because I decided to whip up a big batch of this stuff as an excuse to invite friends over, being so busy with school and my part-time job. It was months before I saw any of my friends. I made this random batch to invite friends over to catch up and hang out. And the idea just came, and the fundraiser came, then the business, and it's crazy to think about.
That's so cool. When I was researching this podcast and I was looking at the testimonials on your website, and your website is really super engaging, and I was having a lot of fun on it. But as I was researching, I noticed that you guys were at Smorgasburg, which another one of our customers has also participated in that, a great company called Home Freet in New York City. And
yes,
and he was actually a guest on an earlier podcast. So I would love to know, Lloyd, was sort of Smorgasburg the first way that you got this out to the general community, or what was the evolution like once you realized that you had something special on your hand? How did you go from that to opening up your brick and mortar?
That's a great question. Steven, you're asking the best question.
Well, I love it. I'm so fascinated by it, and I appreciate that. But I want to learn about your business because everything about it has really captivated my attention. And like I said, when I was reading these testimonials, and I know from speaking to others, the journey from the concept to the brick and mortar really fascinates me. So I would love to know more about that.
Absolutely. At the time, so this is 2014, March was the fundraising beginning. By January 2015 is when we became an LLC, and we realized that this is something we wanted to do on the side with school and our part-time jobs. And so the focus was, how do we juggle college classes, my part-time jobs actually, and the business? And so first we began with farmers markets, pop-ups, anything we can do as a one-off so that it's not too big of a commitment. That's how we got our start. In Jersey City, there was this thing called Pacific Flea. That was our second pop-up after this pop-up in Lincoln Park for the Filipino Independence Festival. And so we did that for about a year. In that year, also, we started wholesaling to cafes and restaurants, because what we realized is that if we have classes Monday through, let's say Thursday, Friday can be our production day, and then we can deliver it that Friday evening. And having a consistent production schedule and delivery schedule is something that we could do while juggling our classes. And so that's what the route that we did. We also had an online store where not only did we deliver those wholesale orders, but we also delivered to people's homes too. Now, the end of 2015, December 2015, was when we set our eyes on Smorgasburg. Now, Smorgasburg, for anyone not in New York City or New Jersey or the East Coast, that is the big show of food vendors on the East Coast. It is New York City's biggest outdoor food market. It is the talk of the town. That's where food trends begin. And so we were like, why not? We'll take classes Monday through Wednesday. We'll have like a big load on our class schedule. Thursday, Friday, we'll be in production. And then Saturday, Sunday, we'll be at Smorgasburg. And we applied. We got the call. We went in for a tasting. They loved it. They approved us. And we were like, whoa, we really have something special on our hands. At the time, a storefront is a huge commitment. But at the beginning, especially if maybe this is like a side hustle or a side hustle slowly growing into the main hustle, to build out a storefront requires so much money, so much dedication and time also. And so the way we found to get around that was we found commercial kitchen space in one of our wholesale partners where they had a big kitchen. There was a small section that they didn't really use. It was probably 10 by 10. And in that small space, we would make liners and liners and liners of Baonanas that we would then take on the weekends. And we sold out for a lot of the first weekends. And it was just an insane thing where it was really our first taste of a New York City market, and B, just that this thing was really something special that we should probably really consider spending more time on and growing it.
That's so cool too, because again, I want to sort of emphasize in case it slipped past for our listeners, you're doing all this while you're taking a full-time class load.
Correct. Yeah. I realized early on that the two resources that we have in starting any business is time and money. And we didn't have the money, but we had some time. Now, there were some things that were non-negotiable. And for listeners out there, maybe a non-negotiable is taking your kids to school, or maybe it's the job that you have now. And so the things that were negotiable was when we took our classes, was when we could do production days, was where we go to market. And so with the time and whatever little money we had from the profit that we made, because it was a bootstrap operation from day one, we just had to find ways to use that time and use that money in a way that we felt brought us the best return on an investment.
That's such a powerful lesson, and I think about that a lot because occasionally I'll speak to someone and they'll talk to me about something that they want to do, but then they say, well, I don't have the time, or they'll have some other excuse, but it really is just that, an excuse, because if they were to really look at how they spend their time and how much time they spend binge watching a certain series or doing anything, that time could be repurposed. And I really have a lot of respect. I can relate somewhat because I had to get involved in this at a time when I was still in law school. And I think when you have two things going on that really are demanding of your time, I feel it kind of sharpens your focus to a very high degree so that when you're engaged in whatever activity you're in, you really have to give it your most because you know that the amount of time you have allocated for it is limited. And I somehow think that translates into a more high-powered result, oddly enough. So it's kind of a cool thing how that works out, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you put it best, where we sleep, if you're lucky, 6 to 8 hours a day. And then if you have a job, that's another 8 hours. So that's 16 hours out of a day already, taken care of. And so with the remaining time, and it's not easy. There's a lot of habit building and a lot of systemizing that needs to happen. And as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was Baonanas or habits that I needed to take up to become the CEB, as I like to put it, that I am today. And it's a never ending journey to just be better and to be okay with being imperfect too, because I would be lying if I said every day, every morning routine, every week, I go by the perfect schedule. That's very far from the truth. But I think what does remain is this idea that there's bigger goals and there's values that we have as a company, that Trisha and I both have as leaders in our company, and also for us too as people. Like we're very family oriented. We're very quote unquote work-life balance is a phrase you want to use. Just it's not always just about work. And if these priorities and values are clear to you, then you can build a schedule that helps reflect that and helps you achieve goals that reflect that also.
I really like what you were saying. I was thinking as you were speaking that, because I appreciate your candor, and it's the same for me, and I think it's the same for anyone that's honest. Not every day is going to be perfect, and not every day is necessarily the best. But I'm a huge believer in consistency, and as long as you keep at it day in and day out, over time, you're pushing yourself towards those results. And the other thing I was thinking about as I was listening to you, because when I was reading again on your website, I know that one of your hobbies that you listed was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I would imagine that being a practitioner of martial arts has to be exceptionally helpful in building and running a business and being a leader, because that type of a discipline forces you to be a leader of yourself first through self-discipline, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With business, you're always going through adversity. You're always getting humbled, much like in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're always going through adversity. You're always getting yourself humbled. Probably one of the biggest carryovers from BJJ is just this student mindset. Like in Jiu-Jitsu, even if you get your black belt, there's still so much more for you to learn. And in business also, like when I started, I again, I have no business background. A lot of it was just having a student mindset, a growth mindset of everything can be developed, everything can be learned if you have the right attitude and you put the effort into learning. Even today, I still know there's so much that I don't know, and I just have an enthusiasm and a curiosity in learning whatever I can to better our team, to better and to also better our company too.
I think everything you're saying is so correct, and then I'm really inspired by it because I completely agree with you. I mean, I think learning is a never-ending process, and I think it's very important that leaders of organizations are communicating the emotions of enthusiasm and optimism and those types of things, because a negative attitude or sort of a cynical attitude really permeates an organization in a very bad way. And I think sometimes, and it's hard when you're a leader because we all go through things and, there's challenges, what have you. But I think it's really incumbent upon leaders to put forth that enthusiasm, that forward looking, and that's really cool. So let me ask you, Lloyd, so now you've got the brick and mortar. What were some of the decisions that you made early on? Because I can again see from your website, you've got a really cool selection of items. Obviously, once you go from being at Smorgasburg to a brick and mortar, you have to expand your offerings. What was some of the thoughts that went into it in terms of how you felt you had to evolve once you made that leap and opened up your storefront?
Yeah, our biggest thing with building this store was scalability. Now, since day one, I knew that storefronts, they had their pros and cons. I knew that if we were too dependent on just foot traffic or just a brick and mortar, that we're going to be limited to a lot of environmental factors. I mean, take a look at what just happened in 2020 with the pandemic. It was such a dramatic impact on anyone that has a brick and mortar. And so early on, that's why we developed a multifaceted operation with markets and events, catering, wholesale, and Smorgasburg. And this way, we're diversifying our income. We also have e-commerce and nationwide shipping also. But this way, in case one of them takes a big impact, we still have other avenues to generate revenue. So that was definitely number one in terms of where exactly are we going to build, because scalability and being able to grow all of these operations that we have, which I consider all different businesses with their own separate P&Ls under the umbrella that is Baonanas, I knew that we needed a space that can not only solely rely on the foot traffic of the brick and mortar, but that can 10x our wedding or corporate catering, that can 10x our wholesale operation. And that's exactly what we found at Baonanas HQ here in Jersey City.
That's really cool, because I think what you're saying, and you guys were ahead of the trend, but I think it's going to be something that's going to be much more relevant going forward, is as people have learned the lesson of what we've gone through in the past year. I think people are going to understand that it's great to have, and this goes for a restaurant, a bar, a bakery, what have you. It's great to have that brick and mortar because it gives you an opportunity to engage with the community in a certain way. But you absolutely want to leverage your brand or your platform so that you have multiple ways of engaging with the community and expanding your footprint outside of just the brick and mortar. And the fact that you did that from the beginning puts you in a great position. Now, another question I have, because I was looking, your social media is terrific. And there's a saying by Peter Drucker, which is about business. And he said that all business is innovation and marketing. And so my question is, the concept being centered around banana pudding is really, I think, very cool. And I love concepts that are hyper-focused. To what extent do you think that your social media presence has evolved from Baonanas? Or to what extent do you think that the way you're executing on social media is helping to reinforce and sort of expand the brand, if that makes any sense? It's almost like a which came first, the chicken or the egg concept here.
I think social media, without social media, Baonanas would have never got its start, right? Social media, it's free, and it's a way for you to engage, one of many ways for you to engage and to capture your audience and connect with your audience, which I think is the most important thing. And for us, it's how we got our start on Instagram with our little hashtag. And what we found is that who we resonate with the most are people that want to connect with a brand that actually genuinely cares for you. And when I say that, one question we always ask is like, what are you Baonanas for? What are you passionate for? Do more of that. And this is your treat to reward yourself for doing whatever it is that you're Baonanas for. And at a time when it can be really difficult to do the things that make you happy, or to be so caught up in what you think you should be doing, or when you might be so worried about what other people are doing, we try to center people on that simple question, like, what are you Baonanas for? Who are you Baonanas for? Right? And on social media, like, me personally, like, although I would be learning jiu-jitsu, I also used to be a hip-hop dancer creatively for most of my college tenure, which is longer than I like to admit. Dance is such a huge part of my life. And we recently just did a video of like me and my two friends that I grew up with dancing within our space. And it's something completely different. It's something that no other, at least as far as I've seen, like no other restaurant or dessert shop has done. And it's something that people like really like. And because it's just, I think if there's anything we try to communicate, it's just this authenticity and just this celebration of, again, whatever it is you're Baonanas for, go out and do that.
There's so much there. And first of all, it really comes through because I saw that video on Instagram. It's one of the best pieces of content I've ever seen on social media. It's awesome. But, what I was thinking as I'm listening to you is like, now everybody is trying to get attention through social media. I think people now who didn't really understand it, it's becoming more and more widely understood today. And so what's going to be a differentiating factor going forward is the quality of the content. At some point, the quality will matter. And I think that's already happening. Yeah. But the other thing I was thinking about as you were speaking with the concept of what are you Baonanas for? Who are you Baonanas for? I love people who use social media to inspire. So, for example, I love your social media. I love David Goggins, Cameron Haynes. People who post on social media things that inspire, because so many people use social media to either portray a certain lifestyle or to flaunt certain aspects of their life, and it's really somewhat egotistical and somewhat insecure. And what I would love to know a little bit more about, and I think the audience would as well, because a lot of our listeners are aspirational and starting a business and all of that. And you just said it so well, using social media to connect. It's my belief, and I'm curious to know your thoughts, Lloyd, that the way you connect is exactly what you said, through authenticity. Don't try to present something, just be yourself and present that in the most engaging and honest manner, and it'll connect with people. But I'd love to know, your thoughts, if someone's starting out, how they can sort of use that social media tool. What is the best way to start from the just beginning of using those tools to really begin to get brand engagement?
So, authenticity, number one, for sure. Everything doesn't need to be perfect. Like I recently just started doing a bi-weekly catch-up, kind of like a video newsletter of what's going on at Baonanas. And I bought a microphone for $20 that has a red little fuzzy thing, whatever those things are called, And I mean, I'm not here to pretend like I could afford something more, because I couldn't, and I embrace that, and people actually get behind that, which is really cool to see, And I think that in a world where we're constantly getting ads, we're constantly trying to get sold to, and a lot of times we feel, I think, very untrustworthy, or we don't trust people that try to sell us things. What we crave is this genuine message and just this honest connection, whether it's a brand or even people too. I mean, who likes connecting with a liar that you don't know if they're telling you the truth or not? And so I think that not only is it good for the audience to connect with, but I think it's also good for you too. I think that if you try to put out something that isn't representative of who you are or what you believe in or what your values are, I think it's going to suck the soul out of you, to be honest. And for me, it's been a little therapeutic. I've shared about the struggle we had at the pandemic. I shared about how if it wasn't for the EIDL and the PPP, these stimulus packages targeted for small business, I shared that without those, I don't think we would have survived, and it was a scary thing to share, but I found that people gravitate towards that, and so there's two things I would say for anyone out there that are, even if you're just starting and you have 2 followers and it's your mom and your dad and your dog, maybe you got 3 followers, consistency and authenticity. If you just keep at it, at one point we had 1 follower, and that was 6 years ago. And so if you just keep doing those 2 things, people will connect with you and people will want to follow in your journey as a brand, as an entrepreneur, and as a person.
I think that's so well said, and I completely agree with you. And I think that that's what makes it your social media and anyone's social media that's honest and authentic. That's what makes it a go-to location, because you're giving people value. And of course, there's all those wonderful things that come along with it. And I think that's perfectly said. So let me ask you this, Lloyd. Now that you have this amazing brand, you have this amazing engagement with the community. Now, as you're scaling your brand, how do you decide whether or not to incorporate additional offerings that are not banana pudding? In other words, you've done something which every business is desperate to do, which is build real engagement with their consumer, with their fans, with people who are engaging with Baonanas. So obviously, now that you have that engagement, you have the opportunity to offer additional items, whether it's swag, whether it's different menu items, whether it's whatever it would be. How do you decide what items to offer and layer onto the brand? Or do you just say, you know what, the time isn't right for that? Or what is your thought process with respect to those dynamics?
Yeah. So number one would be, how would I feel if I put the Baonanas logo on that? Right? This is something that Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, once talked about, I think in one of his purchases of some channel or something, I have no clue, but he envisioned the Disney logo on whatever it is that he was considering acquiring, and he just was observing how he felt about that. So for example, over here at Baonanas HQ, we started offering panda baos, which is, we take pandesal, which is like the national bread of the Philippines. And we have different things like a white truffle aioli chicken salad. We have a kimchi cheese spam slider as well. And for most people, you think, okay, what is this dessert company doing creating this panda style sliders? Like it's kind of left field, but in terms of highlighting our Filipino roots, in terms of serving something to the community that doesn't have too many options in hot foods, there was a lot of value behind making that decision, not only from just the sales aspect, but just from a values aspect, right? So that's question number one. And for the panda baos, yeah, we felt proud about putting the Baonanas logo, which for anyone out there, it's a cute little bear chilling on a banana. And so number two would be, before I offer something new, is there anything that I currently have that I could turn up the volume on, right? One thing I was guilty in the beginning of Baonanas, and even sometimes now I get into a little bit of falling into this trap of spreading myself too thin, where I'm going a mile wide and an inch deep versus a mile deep and an inch wide, right? Like 2017, we had wholesale catering and markets and events, and they were all pretty okay sized operations. Now, I took the first 2 months of 2017 to go a mile deep on catering. I'm like, okay, I'm going to build out my catering package. I'm going to create a marketing strategy for corporate and wedding catering. And I let the other operations run on cruise control just so I can really, really take this thing all the way down the field. And we ended up 2 or like maybe 2.5 to 3.5 Xing our sales and catering, which for us, it's a low cost of goods, cost of labor operation with high profit margins. Before you create a new product or a new service, if you already have a product or a service, focus on what you're doing well, turn it up as loud as you can. And, if you're feeling good about that and you want to put that on cruise control for a little bit so that you can start and grow something else, that's the route that I would take for any aspiring or for any just current entrepreneurs out there that are considering introducing something new.
I really like that, and I can really relate to that too, because there's such a power in being able to focus, and to focus your energy and your attention on one task. And I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, I can relate to what you're saying. I've got so many different ideas that I want to pursue, but at the end of the day, I have to ask myself, like we talked at the very beginning, there's a limited amount of time. Time is a resource. What's the best way to use it? And I think focus is something that is becoming a much more necessary and valuable skill as we have more and more things that distract our attention. If you can actually really focus and bear down and be consistent, and then you pick your head up after 12 months and you've 3x'd what you're doing, that doesn't happen without laser focus and consistency. And you're right, doing that might be better than doing a 10% thing on 8 other items that you could work on,
100%. Yeah. And in the year 2021, the internet is a double-edged sword. A lot of my early lessons and self-taught business acumen was through books and through the internet, things like online classes. But at the same time, that same internet is also where you could spend 5 hours on YouTube watching unboxings or cat videos,
Yep.
And so I totally get it. And again, it's a growth mindset thing where if you have trouble with focusing or, you're guilty of task switching, which I know I am sometimes, it takes time to build up little habits and just ways to be able to laser focus on whatever the biggest thing you can do that makes the biggest impact on the business.
So this has been such an enjoyable conversation, and there's one question I really want to ask you before we end our conversation. It's the following. Your whole journey in Baonanas has been, it's been exceptional, and it's really been fascinating how it went from the serendipitous invent of the car to Smorgasburg to here. You're obviously an extremely thoughtful person, and you're excellent in execution. Where do you see Baonanas in 5 years? Are you somebody that likes to plan out that long into the future, or do you have a different sort of methodology in terms of how you project where you're building this? Because obviously you've got an amazing brand, and it's scaling, and it's unique, and it's being reinforced beautifully by everything you're doing. I'm just curious what your sort of thoughts are 5 years out, where you envision this brand.
First off, let me just say thank you for the extremely kind words, Stephen. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. It's always a fun time to be able to talk shop with someone who also shares the same values in business. And to answer your question, I'm a firm believer in creating a North Star that you work towards, not only just business-wise, but also life-wise too. In 5 years, I can tell you what I want my ideal week to look like. I want to be able to work anywhere. I want to be able to not be tied down to one location. I want to be able to take vacation with Trisha, who, we're getting married next year. And
congratulations.
Thank you so much. It's crazy planning a wedding in the middle of a pandemic, but it's it's been fun. And so, all of these things, I think that for me personally, I do need to envision so that when the days get rough and I don't want to roll out of bed and work on things, that's my North Star, and that's what I'm working towards. And so, in 5 years, I do want Baonanas to be not only in Jersey, we want to expand to New York, I want to expand to cities that I think have a really cool food culture, places like Austin, Texas, LA is really cool. And I want Baonanas to be able to be a place where people can just go to and just be Baonanas,
Yeah.
I want to be able to do the things that we do here at Baonanas HQ, like offering whatever benefits we can to part-time team members, full-time team members. We want to do business differently in terms of just culture. And, like we began nationwide shipping, and we certainly want to scale that too. We really like what we've done here with this multifaceted operation. And we feel like that can be done in other major cities also. Like right now, I think the biggest question that we have as a company is, do we go the franchise route or the licensing route in terms of keeping everything in-house and we open more locations in-house? All we know for sure is that we don't want to play small. We've bootstrapped this far, and it's about time that we start making bigger moves, and that's going to be an interesting journey to walk down. And our mission at the end of the day is to spread happiness. We just happen to use Baonanas in pints to do that.
Lloyd, this has been one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had maybe ever, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, I've really gotten so much out of talking to you, and so much of what you say I completely agree with, and this was just exceptional. I want to give everybody, if you're looking for these guys online, go to www.boananas.com. You can find them on Instagram at the same handle, Baonanas. Lloyd, what's your address in Jersey City in case people are here and they want to stop in?
Yeah, sure. And real quick, it's actually BAO.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. BAO. I have my handwriting's so horrible, even I can't read it. BAO.
It's all good. Yeah, it's BAONANAS.com. Our handle is also the same exact thing, BAONANAS. Whether you live in Jersey, New York, or wherever, we do ship nationwide now. So hopefully you get to try us out.
Lloyd, this was great. And I look forward to seeing the evolution of your company. There's no question you're going to be and continue to be and grow the success that you've already created. And just an absolute pleasure. So thank you again for taking the time to speak with me. I really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you as well, Stephen. This was an absolute pleasure. If you ever want to have me back on, I would love to.
Oh, that's a must, because there's so many things that I want to talk about. So that's going to definitely happen. Awesome, man. Thank you, Lloyd.
So much.
Thanks. I really enjoyed that interview with Lloyd. There was so much to learn there, and the story of how he began Baonanas with Trisha and the journey that they went on. Really, really powerful, really inspiring, and really so much to learn there. And if you're thinking of starting a business of any kind, that's an interview that I would strongly consider listening to again, because there was so much great and actionable information there. I got a lot of great emails from everyone on the last podcast I did. And I always enjoy your emails, so please keep sending them. You can reach me at steven@woolcofoods.com. Or you can DM me at Woolco Foods. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please give us a review, give us a rating on iTunes. It really helps us out. I would appreciate it. If you know other people who would like this content, please recommend the podcast to them. That would be much appreciated. But most importantly, everyone, have an awesome, awesome day.
Thank you for listening to The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods. Please be sure to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. And to learn more about Woolco Foods or Stephen Toberoff, please visit us at woolcofoods.net.